Even today, many players don't get the flowers they deserve. In fact, some might not get flowers at all. Throughout the history of the NBA, the league has always focused on the big names, like superstars or ones part of a super team. But that focus isn't always complete. Many all-stars can be overlooked, especially if they're on a team below 500. Even former MVPs can fall victim to being underrated. NBA players can be underrated for a variety of reasons. They may not be athletic, so fans may shy away more from them. It may be that their stats just aren't spectacular, but their impact goes far beyond what it seems. It could be that they just don't want to be in the spotlight, despite their immense potential, and the fact that they were not the best player on a famous team for a long enough time. These are only a few of the things that keep a player away from not being underrated. But today, let's not sleep at the lesser talk stars, from the past to the present. In this video, we talk about what I consider to be the most underrated NBA players of all time. So buckle up and stick around as we dive deep into the forgotten land of NBA stars. In the early 1980s, the top teams of the league were the Lakers, the Celtics, 76, and the Bucks. While the Lakers and the Celtics went on to have a famous rivalry, taking turns being crowned as the NBA champion, and the 76ers won it all in 1983, the Bucks lagged behind slightly. Despite numerous excellent seasons, demonstrating their consistency, and visits to the conference finals, they simply couldn't have it all to win a title in the 1980s. One of the star players of the 80s Bucks was Sidney Moncrief. Moncrief is known for being one of the best perimeter defenders as a guard. Prior to him, the league hadn't seen a guard that had two-way excellence similar to Moncrief. The best defensive point guards always had implications. They would often risk it regularly, constantly jumping into passing lanes, which would create potential for inefficiency as players could get used to their strategies, passing quickly to somebody wide open and one too far for the defender to catch. And while their strategies led to impressive stat lines, more than 3 steals per game for example, Moncrief differed from other point guards from the time, an anomaly you could say. Instead of gambling for steals like players averaging 3 steals per game, say Alvin Robertson and Michael Ray Richardson, Moncrief's way of defense was more methodical. He focused on containment, staying chest to chest on opponents. This prevented dribble penetration and forced them to pass the ball. Being 6'4", Moncrief's height could allow him to play multiple positions: the point guard, shooting guard, even small forward. He had this combination of being physical and being relentless on conditioning. Moncrief was famous for what fans would eventually call his squid grip. Because he had such long arms for a guard of his frame and lightning lateral quickness, he could move his arms so rapidly and so disruptingly that offensive players felt like there were more than 2 limbs attacking the ball. The squid grip also referred to the Bucks All-Stars' mastery of what is called the veteran hold, where he could easily grab a handful of his opponent's jersey, or hooking their hip when they tried to explode for a drive. His veteran hold was super subtle, to the point where refs rarely saw it. Moncrief had amazing positioning tactics too. He would deny shooters from their normal catching spots, forcing the team to their third and fourth options. While this didn't affect box scores much, it helped lead the way for the Bucks to become a top defensive team. Going to the scoring factor, Moncrief averaged all-star outputs. In his prime at age 25 in the 1983 season, he averaged 22 points per game on 52% efficiency from the field, 5.8 rebounds, 3.9 assists, and 1.5 steals. He ranked 4th in MVP voting, ahead of Julius Erving and Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, and was only behind Moses Malone, Larry Bird, and Magic Johnson. He actually averaged more win shares than Magic to put it, 13.2 versus 12.5. Because of his impact, Moncrief is the first player ever to win a Defensive Player of the Year award. The DPOY award was first introduced in 1983, and Moncrief went on to take back-to-back awards. He appeared as an All-Star 5 times, made the All-Defensive First Team 4 times, made All-NBA First Team once, and played for 2 teams, the Bucks and the Hawks. However, unfortunately, Moncrief was set back by numerous knee and foot injuries later in his career. From 1986 to 1989, he never appeared in more than 65 games for a season. Moncrief then retired at the end of the 1989 season, but came back briefly near the end of the regulars in 1990-91 for the Hawks. In the 1991 playoffs, he showed flashes of his former self. In Game 4, he dropped 23 points and 2 steals in 22 minutes. The Hawks would lose out in 5 to the Detroit Pistons, ending his career. When you think of the shortest players in NBA history, a few come to mind: 5'3" Muggsy Bogues, Bud Webb, or 5'5" Earl Boykins. While these three were impressive on their own, none were all-stars like Calvin Murphy. Being 5'9" and weighing 165 pounds, Murphy was actually one of the most productive guards at the scoring side. Being a candidate for a team's number 1 or number 2 scoring option, Murphy had a season in 1977-78 where he averaged 25.6 points per game, 5th in the league, and among other underrated names like Bernard King, Bob Lanier, and Randy Smith. He was also the only point guard in the top 5 and set a record for the most points per game by a player under 6 feet. This record would stand until the 1990-91 season, when Michael Adams averaged 26 points and 10 assists. Murphy was an incredibly efficient player. He regularly had seasons where he shot over 90% from free throws, including one in 1980-81 where he was 95.2% from the free throw line. He shot 48.2% from the field, higher than averages from Allen Iverson, Isaiah Thomas, and Nate Archibald for his career. Murphy's jumper was so smooth. He relied on his explosive leap, and because he was actually a former Baton twirler, which made his calf strength more pronounced, it allowed him to stop on a dime and elevate straight up before defenders could react in time. Murphy had an obsession with the way the ball rotated. He would generate lots of backspin, so it would likely take a soft bounce into the net rather than clanking off. In addition, his release point was high, above his head, and combined with his athleticism, it made Murphy's shots surprisingly hard to block. Murphy played from 1970 to 1983, made the All-Star team in 1979, was inducted to the Hall of Fame, and averaged 17.9 points for his career. Throughout that 13-year span, he played for one team, of course, being the Rockets. When people think about first overall picks, two categories come into place most of the time. Memorable first picks like LeBron or Wemby, or busts like Michael Olowokandi or Anthony Bennett. But in between there are the players that didn't have quite the spectacular glory as a player like LeBron, but did way better than a bust. Elton Brand falls into this category, and he was more decent than people think. As a first pick of the 1999 NBA draft, Brand was one of only a few rookies to average 20 points and 10 rebounds or more. Playing for the Clippers, he helped lead them to their first playoff appearance in 9 years in 2006, where LAC went to the second round before being eliminated by the Suns. Even though Brand was only 6'9", small for a power forward, he had an elite wingspan of 7'5", as well as a 275-pound frame, allowing him to be one of the best shot blockers in the league despite those implications. In 2003, he averaged 2.5 blocks per game, which was 4th in the league and ahead of even Shaq. Because Brand was so bulky, once he pinned a defender on his hip, Brand had essentially won the possession. Brand also had an automatic mid-ranger. He could shoot efficiently from 15 to 18 feet. His baby hooks were really polished, and Brand mastered the art of footwork. He would often use many head fakes and jab steps to get defenders leaning before spinning towards the rim for yet another efficient shot. Secondly, an excellent rim runner was what Brand was. He would regularly beat opposing centers to the other side of the court. Brand took advantage of all of his physical abilities, and that led him to a very solid all-star career. He averaged 15.9 points and 8.5 rebounds throughout his span from 1999 to 2016. In 2006, he was rated 7th in MVP voting, and made All-NBA second team. Brand played for 5 teams: the Bulls, Clippers, 76ers, Mavericks, and the Hawks. He is a 3-time consecutive offensive rebounds leader, earning the title in 3 out of his 4 first seasons. Michael Jordan and the Cavaliers. Why do these two correlate? Well, it's because time after time after time, the Bulls always prevail in the playoffs, preventing the Cavaliers from making it to the top 7 of the playoff bracket. While the 80s and 90s Cavaliers are known for being on the wrong side of history, that makes many of their players underrated due to the circumstances. And one such player was Mark Price, a 4-time All-Star who was one of the best point guards in the league in his prime. He was only the second ever player to join the 50-49 club, and his playstyle was not just ahead of his time. It redefined parts of the game that would probably look different if Price didn't exist. In modern NBA games, you may see guards split a pick and roll, driving directly between their 2 defenders, trying to trap them. Price is the reason why you see them use this technique. Price's quickness allowed him to actually duck between defenders, and that created a 4-on-3 advantage for the Cavs. This really caught defenders off guard, and as the years went on, they realized that they should make changes to how pick and roll worked. Before Price, guards wouldn't try to bypass a trap. They would either retreat or pass it to another. Unfortunately, in 1990, Price tore his ACL, and you would expect him to deal with a major derailment of his production. And while his athleticism did take a hit, he bounced back well and was still basically 85% of his peak form. Price made it to the first team, ahead of even John Stockton. In the same season he made it to said team, he averaged 18 points and 8 assists on 48, 41, 94 splits. Price also led the league in free throw efficiency 3 times, in 1992, 1993, and 1987. Price played for 4 teams: the Cavs, Bullets, which later became the Wizards, Warriors, and the Magic. For our final player in the video, let's go to Hal Greer, one of the cornerstones of the Syracuse Nationals, which later transitioned into becoming the 76ers. Greer had an unusual amount of consistency, not in terms of his production or production efficiency, but because he made the All-NBA second team, and exactly the second team, for 7 years in a row. Typically, players would vary in which team they get selected in. This was because while he put up all-star caliber numbers, over 20 points per game in the majority of his prime, peaking at 24 points and 5 rebounds in 1968, he was not in the same tier as guards like Jerry West and Oscar Robertson, so he would always end up in the second, not the first. In 1967, Greer was teammates with the great Wilt Chamberlain. Despite Wilt's impact, Greer was actually the leading scorer for the 76ers playoff run that year. In comparison, Greer averaged 27.7 points, while Wilt averaged 21.7. One of the most unusual parts of Greer's game, he actually jumped while he was doing free throws. The jumping actually helped Greer become a more efficient free throw shooter. Greer averaged 80.1% from the free throw line throughout his career. He also had impressive longevity. Greer played in 3 different decades, the 50s, 60s, and 70s, and for one single team. The 6'2", 175-pound guard was a 10-time All-Star, was inducted to the Hall of Fame, and when he retired in 1973 after playing for 15 years, he was the record holder for the most games played by an NBA player at 1,122, and scored a total of 21,586 points, which is still 41st place all-time, and ahead of players such as David Robinson, George Gervin, and Mitch Richmond. Greer was named as part of the 50 greatest players in NBA history in 1996, and again as part of the NBA's 75th anniversary in 2022. Now that completes this list of some of the NBA's most underrated players. Of course, there are a lot more candidates that I haven't covered in this video. But what do you guys think? Who are your top 5 most underrated players in NBA history? I'm curious to see what you guys put down in the comment section. Anyways, I'm some random Xander, and this is it. Goodbye.